As I said earlier, wonderful to be back here with you all. Beth and I have been looking forward to this for the last week. We have very fond memories of being with you all years ago, and glad to be back here again, especially on Maundy Thursday, one of my favorite services of the year. Maundy Thursday, as you may or may not know, comes from the Latin mandate, meaning commandment. What Jesus commands us to do, to love one another. Been thinking about that this week. During Lent, I think is a good time for reflection and introspection. Especially Holy Week is a particularly good time. I've been outside a good bit this week, and a great place, I think, to find solace and reflection and time to be with God. For me, at least, that's one of the best places I have to do that. This week, as I was thinking about this idea of love and loving one another, I started thinking about Granny. Granny was the grandmother of one of the friends in the neighborhood where I grew up. Granny was a force to be reckoned with. She stood about that high. She looked like she was always intently angry at somebody. I always thought it was me, so I gave her a wide way to go. She had a beehive, a gray beehive that she wore tightly knit to her head. She had little glasses that accentuated that sort of angry look. And she was also stone deaf. So communication was, at least in my mind, impossible with this woman for a lot of different reasons. So as a little boy, like I said, I steered clear of Granny as much as I could. She was always around, so that was difficult to do. What I came to understand, though, over the years being around her and finally getting to know her, was she didn't miss a beat in terms of reading your lips. So if you didn't want her to know what you were saying, you needed to turn around and go the other way. Actually, she used to turn her back on her son, my friend's father, when she didn't want to know whatever it was he was telling her. So she had that down pat. I came to love Granny like my own. I don't know what it was. You know, when we talk about love, sometimes it's hard to really articulate what it is. I mean, we think about love as eros, oftentimes romantic love, those that we're married to or been in relationship with. We think about that oftentimes. Phileo, brotherly love. Agape, more of the love that we experience in the church. Of course, tonight Jesus is talking about his understanding of love. He is commanding the disciples and us to love one another as he loved them and loves us. Now that's pretty powerful to think about. We don't always understand, like I said, what it means really to truly love. But for Jesus, it was an action. We often think about love as a feeling. I feel warmly towards someone. I love my wife passionately. You know, whatever that happens to be. We think about that, but the feelings are often fleeting. Beth and I have been married almost 38 years. We still have those feelings, but not like we did when we were in our 20s. It's a different kind of love. It's a deeper, more, in many ways, more satisfying love that we have experienced all the challenges in life, all of the ups and downs, for better and for worse. When you live through that with somebody and you stay with them and you stay committed to them, even when they're at their worst, that's really what love is about. It is an action that we take. It is a deliberate thing that we do. Sometimes we may not feel very loving or lovable, but we still have to practice love. Jesus knew that Judas would betray him. And he loved him anyway. He knew that Peter would deny him not once, not twice, but 3 times. And he still loved him. He loved him enough to sacrifice himself, not only for the 2 of them, but for all of us. And that's a kind of love, I think, sometimes that we forget about. Sacrificial love. That we don't always feel, as I said, maybe like loving those we love. They're not lovable at particular times in their life. But we have to look past that. We have to practice sacrificial love and really think about that and spend time understanding what that means for the people that we experience in community like this even in our own families, wherever we run into people, to love our neighbor as ourselves. What does that mean? Sometimes it means putting our feelings aside. And I don't mean in an abusive way. I mean in everyday life, the challenges that we face, putting our feelings aside and continuing to act in love towards one another. Unfortunately, we're not doing the foot washing tonight. It's a wonderful part of this service, but because of continuing to love one another and look out for each other's health in terms of COVID, it's still around, we've decided not to have foot washing. But that is part of our service, typically in Maundy Thursday, because it is an action that we take to kneel at the feet of someone and to tenderly wash their feet, whether it be our spouse, whether it be someone in community, whatever it is. The humility that takes to kneel down in front of somebody, that is an action that we take. It's interesting when we think about Jesus and his love. As I said, Peter denied him 3 times. And then they turn around at Jesus' third appearance after the resurrection on the beach when they're out fishing and they bring in all those great fish. Jesus has a conversation with Peter and he says, "Do you love me?" Peter says, "Of course I do." He says, "Then feed my sheep." He asks him again, "Do you love me?" And he says, "You know I do. Of course I do." He says, "Tend my sheep." Again, he asks, "Do you love me?" 3 times, reminiscent of the 3 times that Peter denied him. He asks him if he loves him, and he says, "Yes, I do." And he says, "Feed my sheep." He is calling Peter into action, doing what it is that is most important to Jesus, is to take care of those that we love. And he calls him into that action. That's what we're called to do. So whether we're washing feet tonight or not, which we're not, let's take a few minutes to reflect upon what does it truly mean to love one another? What does it truly mean in a community to act out of that love? Not just to say it. We oftentimes say it, "I love you." That's something we throw around. But what does it truly mean? So let's spend a few minutes tonight that we'd otherwise spend washing each other's feet and reflect upon that idea of what does it truly mean to love one another in community.